Welcome back, everybody. It is a Fox 40 special report for you tonight. To a lot of people, she was a gentle old woman who cared for elderly and disabled people. And when I mention her name, it certainly will sound familiar to you. I'm talking about Dorothea Puente. She was not a gentle person. She was a calculated criminal who poisoned her tenants, her business partner, and eventually her fiancé.
And it's been 30 years since the convicted serial killer was caught here in Sacramento. And tonight's special report, Fox 40's Allie Wolf shows us never-before-seen pictures from the investigation.
And not just that, but also a closer look at the unanswered questions surrounding Dorothea Puente and why many believe that justice was never served.
Never judge a book by its cover.
Appearances can be deceiving.
Because the contents might be what you've never expected.
Mysteries hide beneath the surface at this charming Victorian in downtown Sacramento.
Flowers, vegetation, greenery, shrubs. It was like, wow, they're oases in a neighborhood. But actually, it was a hellhole.
This sweet-looking lady ran a boarding house here in the 80s. But Dorothea Puente is a convicted serial killer. She was accused of poisoning her business partner, her fiancé, and some of her tenants.
7 people buried in that side yard, huh? They all got down lane in them.
What we'd stumbled on was actually a graveyard at 1426 F Street, and it was Dorothea's graveyard of her victims.
She lured people into her life and preyed on them. But in November of 1988, her deception, her scheming came to an end when retired Sacramento police detective John Cabrera showed up at her home and pulled the first bones from her yard.
I look at the photographs and I feel bad for the victims. I feel bad and not knowing what they suffered or how much they really suffered.
Now, for the first time, Cabrera is publicly sharing the original photos from the investigation, capturing the long days he and his team spent digging in the yard at 1426 F Street. He showed us about 100 images. Most of them are gruesome and devastating, some too graphic to show. From the garden, which became a graveyard, to the homemade wooden coffin and the shovel used to dig up the remains. This collection of photos is a glimpse beyond the crime scene tape, the reality behind the facade on F Street.
You can see what the kitchen looked like. I mean, there's nothing inside the house that tells you, oh my gosh, I've stumbled on this whorehouse.
The boarding house looked like a pleasant and welcoming home.
This house of horrors had this facade.
Puente took in the sick, the weak, the vulnerable, tenants unable to get by on their own. She cashed their Social Security checks. Prosecutors later called those victims shadow people because they had no one. When they disappeared, no one noticed.
This was the room where she basically turned into her own morgue.
In 1982, Bill Clausen's mother, Ruth Murrow, died in Puente's house.
Mama's mom, you can never replace her.
She was her friend, her business partner, a healthy woman in her early 60s. After moving in with Dorothea, she quickly became sick, weak, and died. For Clausen, the loss is still painful.
It'll never go away.
Even with Puente caught, convicted, and dead, he is still fighting for his mother, trying to carry on her memory and undo the story Puente spun.
I want people to understand that she did not commit suicide. Okay? She was murdered, and she was murdered by Dorothea.
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Dorothea Montalva Puente, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
30 years later, there are still questions about this unlikely killer, about who she really was, if she acted alone, and if there were more victims.
Are there more bodies?
I consider Dorothea an enigma.
Journalist Martin Coos hoped to answer some of those questions in 2008 during a series of interviews with Puente in prison.
She almost comes across as the kindliest predator.
After more than 12 hours of conversations,
She is, at heart, unknowable.
at the end of his final visit, he didn't hold back.
was asking her these more pointed questions and asking her how she felt to be known as a serial killer, to be known as someone who was reviled for what she had committed. And she looked me square in the eye and says, "I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks." And that was a moment where the room just suddenly felt still and cold.
Dorothea Puente maintained her innocence until the end.
You know what I'm talking about. I have never killed anybody.
Taking the truth with her to her grave in 2011. Long after her death, Clausen still feels no justice.
You know, she was an evil woman and she put up a front. She conned a lot of people.
Tonight, we're launching season 2 of our podcast series, Exposed, this time on Dorothea Puente. We take you inside this house, the notorious house on F Street, and also you'll hear much more from lead detective John Cabrera. He takes us through the details of the case and also the mysteries that still haunt him today. Exposed, The Shadow Keeper is available now. Ali Wolf, Fox 40 News.
And again, season 2 of Exposed is available now on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. You can also find the episodes on our website, fox40.com. There, you can also get more information about the case, plus a closer look at some of those never-before-seen photos from the investigation.
You get here early morning, you know, when it's cool out, where the water is, you get sort of that low-level mist. And it's dark, and it's actually eerie, and it's like epitomizes the look of what I envision of East Area rapist being out in the fog, prowling as he's trying to find his next victim. You have to understand who you're hunting, because that's how you're going to catch him.
Now the whole community will be victimized because he's running wild.
Well, I think that it's a very serious situation. I think it's very dangerous.
I imagine a lot of women in the area are scared and are nervous.
I have a gun, but I still don't feel safe being, at home alone.
I don't like it. It's getting too close to home. I put locks on my doors, peepholes in just last week. Yeah.
They figure this guy should have been caught already.
It's 1976 in Sacramento, and people are terrified. A man is breaking into homes and attacking women, and by the end of the year, there are 10 victims.
He was the boogeyman. It got to the point where you felt he was going to hit every day, and there was periods of times he hit once a week.
Every day in the newspaper, it seemed like, victim number 6, victim number 8, victim number 22, victim number 25.
Everybody felt it could be me. You walk into a gun store and you could hardly buy a gun because everybody was buying guns, everybody was arming themselves, everybody was putting alarms in.
It's a rare event to have a stranger rape, extremely rare. But what was so unique about this is that it was over and over and over again.
Hello?
This guy was the boogeyman. I mean, everything that you think of in a horror film was this guy.
He is the stuff that nightmares are made of, because he could be anybody. My mom, Sherry Domingo, and her boyfriend, Greg Sanchez, were brutally murdered in our home by an
This was the work of the East Area Rapist.
From Fox 40 in Sacramento, this is Exposed, the East Area Rapist. I'm your host, Ali Wolf.
He would tie the victims, bind their feet, bind their hands, blindfold them. And of course, he was always wore a ski mask or a mask of some kind, so they couldn't identify who he was. He would use the knife, he would use the gun, and he always came in confronting them if they were asleep in bed with a flashlight shining in their eyes. And, the general public really could not understand how he operated and how he was able to get away, with the rapes for so long. But when you are a victim and you're laying in bed and you're staring at a gun and a flashlight in your eyes, you're going to do exactly what you're told to do unless you want to lose your life. You know, if it had been me, I would have done just as the victims did. I would have complied because living is more important to me than trying to fight somebody who has a gun and is in control.
The level of brazenness and terror, I mean, it really was. It was terrifying to this community. And so it's something that to this day, if you ask somebody that lived in the neighborhood or even lived in Sacramento, they're going to tell you their own story.
My name is Jane Carson Sandler, and I was the 5th victim of the East Area rapist, Golden State Killer, also known as the original Night Stalker.
October 5th, 1976. Jane Carson Sandler is a 30-year-old married mother, student, and Air Force reservist. She's home in bed in Citrus Heights, a middle-class community east of Sacramento. Her husband has just left for work.
My son had gotten in bed with me, and we were snuggling. I heard the garage door shut, so I knew my husband was gone. And then the next thing I knew, there was a flashlight shining down the hall and someone running down the hall who was standing before me, but a man with a ski mask on holding a large butcher knife and with a black leather jacket, and he had on these black high-top sneakers. And then he yelled in clenched teeth, you know, "Shut up or I'll kill you." But he said it like, "Shut up or I'll kill you." He immediately tied us both up with shoelaces and sheets and gagged us and blindfolded us. Of course, my heart was pounding so hard, you know, it was almost coming out of my chest, but it was the fear. It wasn't the rape so much, it was the fear of what he was going to do next. He tore sheets and towels, and before he raped me, he stood in the corner of the room and just kept tearing and tearing. He had this ritual of tearing, and I didn't know why he was tearing these sheets. Was he going to hang us? You know, was he going to strangle us? I had no idea. But and that was very terrifying. But what was even more terrifying is that he moved my son, my 3-year-old son, from the bed before he raped me, and I had no idea where he had put him, what he had done, you know, what he had done with him. Was he alive? Was he dead? I had no idea, and that was the fear. So I really can't tell you, you know, much about the rape because I wasn't even thinking about the rape. The whole time I was thinking about, you know, what did you do with my son? And of course I couldn't talk because I was gagged.
Tied up and scared for her life, fearful what he'd do next, Jane hears the rapist go to her kitchen, wander through her house, then come back with more threats.
If I hear anything, if you move, I'm going to come back and kill you. And then he'd leave again and come back again.
The rapist puts Jane's son back in bed with her. Then they manage to escape.
Oh my goodness. That was such a joy. That was such a miracle to have him, you know, I could feel him next to me. I was able to get my blindfold down, and I saw that, that it was getting light. So I just took the risk of waking my son, who had fallen asleep, and say, "We've got to get out of here. We've got to get out of here." So we hobbled down the hall, and when we got to the living room, we found that the front door had been blocked by a chair. And then we went around to the back of the house where the sliding glass door had been left open and hobbled around the backyard to the front gate where I screamed for help. And then my angel came, who was Carol Daly. She was the police detective at the time.
My name is Carol Daly, and I was an investigator with Sacramento County Sheriff's Department.
After every attack, Carol Daly is right there at the crime scene interviewing the victims. By late 1976, the Sacramento Sheriff's Department realizes something needs to be done to try and calm the widespread fear and panic.
We said, we have got to have community meetings, and we'd have anywhere from 300 to 500 people show up, and they just to ask questions.
One thing I want to emphasize, ladies, is for you not to be polite.
This is footage given to us by the Sacramento District Attorney's Office. You can hear Daley speaking to a crowd at one of the community meetings.
We've all been raised to not hurt anybody, to be polite, and don't do this or that. But the all-important thing to remember is that if you are going to protect yourself and if you are going to defend yourself, you must injure your attacker. And I don't mean just hurt him, because by hurting him, you're only going to make him madder. But you injure him enough to incapacitate him in any way that you can.
At a similar community meeting in November of 1976, Daley believes there were more than just concerned citizens in the crowd.
I think he was at the meeting, yes, I do.
Investigators say the East Area rapist may have been there because of what happened after a man stood up to speak.
He did not believe that a rapist could come into the house with both the man and the woman there and rape the wife without the man being able to do anything about it.
7 months later, he and his wife became victims.
He realized that it could happen. And not only it was just he and his wife, but his father and 2 other children were in the home. His wife was raped. He was tied up.
You're going to go left.
We're going to Ground Zero, the neighborhood where the East Area rapist gets his start. We're led by a man who's been on the case for over 20 years.
I'm Paul Holes. I'm the cold case investigator for the Contra Costa County District Attorney's Office.
From Sacramento, we head east on Highway 50.
The very first attack actually occurs in this block up ahead, and then the second attack actually occurs right around the corner on Malaga. So attack number 1 and attack number 3 are occurring in the same block. Take a right.
Paul leads us into the Cordova Meadows neighborhood. It's quiet, it's calm, it feels safe. The cluster of homes is nestled between Highway 50 and the American River.
It was built back in the 1950s, well established in the 1970s when these attacks started to occur. But when you look at them, all these houses are single story. Thereby he could prowl through backyards and he didn't have to worry about people in rear neighbors seeing from the second story of a 2-story house. A lot of these houses are set up to where they don't have windows in between them. So in essence, there's alleys that he could duck into. He'd just hop a fence and he's in between 2 houses. People on the street can't see him and people inside the houses can't see him. There's no street lights. So at the time, with no floodlights were in place, this place would have been pitch black. So he could easily blend into the shadows as he's prowling. Up here is a levee, and this levee will access a canal and then a utility right-of-way.
We're walking a path that leads behind some homes. It's a raised levee. On one side, we can see down into backyards. On the other, there's a small creek and hundreds of acres of open space. You can't drive up here. It's an easy way to slip away and disappear. Kind of the perfect environment for a prowler.
Oh, absolutely. All he had to do was hop a couple of fences on his escape, and he's back here, and law enforcement would have no idea that they needed to come back here to look for him.
We hope you're enjoying this podcast on the East Area Rapist. Hi, I'm Parker White, managing partner, Poswell, White, and Brailsford.
And I'm William Brailsford. The case of the East Area Rapist has no statute of limitations, unlike civil injury cases.
That's right. I'm Joe Andervich. If you've been injured in an accident, your ability to file a claim may run out in as little as 6 months.
We're committed to helping people whose lives have been devastated by injury at Poswell, White, and Brailsford. The good fight, the long haul. That is what we do.
And you know what? Each and every case gets the same level of attention and care.
If you've been injured and are considering filing a claim, don't delay. Contact the lawyers at Poswell, White, and Brailsford.
Don't be afraid to call us for a free consultation. 916-449-1300 or on the web at pwb-attorneys.com.
I blamed myself at that time. I didn't, I thought maybe I was wearing something I shouldn't have worn. Where did this guy see me? Why me? Did he see me, through the Air Force? Did he see me in a supermarket, in college? I had no idea. So I was still living in fear.
Who did he pick? Who were his targets?
His victims ranged all the way from the age of 13 up to in their 40s. We tried to find a common denominator for all of the victims. Did they have blonde hair? Were they brunettes? Were they tall? Were they short? Where did they work? What kind of activities? We tried to go through each victim's life with a fine-tooth comb to try to figure out if there were any common areas where the rapist might have encountered them.
Was there a common theme?
The only common theme, of course, was his method of operation. Very involved in the way that he approached the victims, in the way that he went about the assault, the length of time that he spent in the house. Most of the traditional rape cases, a man will come in and there will be the rape, and then he wants to leave and get out of there as fast as he can. And with the East Area rapist, he didn't seem to care. He would spend 1 hour, 2 hours, a lot of time in the house with the victim. There might be fondling of his penis. There could be the rape. There was oral copulation. There was sodomy.
Starting in June of 1976, he does 15 attacks when there's no male present. And what you see in those first 15 attacks is he's experimenting.
To investigators, it's clear the rapist and prowler is careful. He's careful in covering his tracks and in the way he eludes law enforcement. He's also paying attention.
After that 15th attack with only a female house, there's a newspaper article in the Sacramento Bee, and it has a paragraph in which it says he never attacks with a man present. So attack number 16 in Orangevale, he goes inside the house when there's a couple in the bed. And so he's obviously following, and we've seen this multiple times in terms of he's following his case in the media. He's read that and he's going, okay, I'll show you I can do that.
When attacking couples, the stakes are higher. The violence escalates.
And he always had a gun with him when there's a man present, and he let them know he had a gun. I've got a .357 Magnum. I'll spatter your brains all over the walls. Do what I say. And sometimes he would even put the gun in front of the flashlight, so if the victims did glance back at him, they could see that he meant business, that he had a gun. So he's ordering the male face down, and then he throws bindings to the female and tells the female, bind your husband up, bind your boyfriend up. Once the male has been bound, then he makes the female lay face down next to the male in the bed, and then he goes and ties the female up to make sure she's incapacitated, and then goes back and double checks the male's bindings. With the male now incapacitated and both victims on bed side by side, that's when he will go through the house doing his searching. But his primary focus at this part of the search is going into the kitchen and looking for dishes, something similar. And he comes back with those and he puts them on the male's back. And he basically tells the guy, if I hear these, she's dead, or I'll cut a part of her off and bring it back to you, or I'll kill everything in this house if there's kids in the house. And the ear would even put blankets or pillows on top of the male's head so they can't necessarily hear anything, and the visibility's gone. He then gets the female up. Sometimes he uses a ruse of show me where your purse is at. But he'll take the female out, lay her down, face down in the family room, still bound, has them now separated, and that's when he's going back and forth, double checking them, making sure everything is okay. Then he will start a sexual assault on the female.
And it doesn't end there. The torture continues. The rapist makes himself comfortable in his victims' homes.
Sometimes he'll go into the refrigerator and he's eating, if there's beer, he's drinking beer. Sometimes he's doing that inside the house. Oftentimes he's taking the beer cans outside the house and drinking outside while the woman is left bound inside her house. He typically will leave the house without letting the victim know he's gone. and these victims are left laying there, is he still here? And there will be times where he'll purposely position himself very quietly next to the victim, and she will start to move thinking he's gone, and then he pushes down on the bed, letting him know, I'm still here.
And so they don't call police right away, and he can get away.
Absolutely, and he does that purposely. So he, in most cases, by the time law enforcement is responding, he's home in bed.
The taunting often begins well before an attack and continues long after. Investigators say the East Area rapist spends a lot of time prowling near his victims' homes and calling them before and after he strikes.
Almost all of the victims noted that there were hang-up phone calls to their home maybe a few weeks prior, and of course some of them, they continued to receive a hang-up phone call afterwards, and we really feel that it was the rapist calling back just to hear again to instill more fear in the victim that they might come back.
This chilling recording released by the FBI is believed to be the East Area rapist calling one of his victims in 1977.
I believe that's why he calls some of these victims years afterwards, because he wants to inflict that fear. Hi, it's me again, is what he would say. He gets off on getting these victims scared.
He would make a couple of phone calls and then, hang up. So I knew he was still out there.
Jane remembers getting similar calls, each one a reminder of her paralyzing trauma.
After the rape, I was a mess. I was angry. I was depressed. I was scared, ashamed. I was full of thoughts of revenge. One minute I was crying and sobbing, thinking about, the horrible episode, the trauma that we had just been through. And then the next minute I'm smiling and laughing, thinking, oh my God, we survived, we survived.
She survived, but the list of victims continued to grow.
Every day in the newspaper, it seemed like, victim number 6, victim number 8, victim number 22, victim number 25. I mean, this went on and on. And I feel so fortunate that I was victim number 5, because after my assault, he became much more vicious.
As the rapes progressed and we had more and more victims, he was becoming more and more angry. He was tying tighter. He was pushing a knife against his throat. His threats to kill, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill you. If you do this, I'm going to cut your fingers off. He was making more and more threats, and he was just angrier. I felt when I woke up one night that it was going to be a homicide scene instead of a rape scene.
The physical violence has evolved over time, and it becomes to that point where we all know that it's just so explosive and so brutal that I don't know how to explain it.
We knew he was capable of murder.
On the next episode of Exposed, the East Area Rapist.
We knew that he was ready to kill.
Fear starts to spread in Southern California, and it doesn't take long for the attacks to turn deadly.
Just thought of, the way my sister was brutally raped and murdered, it really hurt.
Exposed, the East Area Rapist is a KTXL Fox 40 production. For more information on Exposed, be sure to visit fox40.com/exposed. There you'll find more details on the case, photos, behind-the-scenes footage, and more. This show is written and produced by Allie Wolf and Cindy Baker. Editing, original music, and sound crafting by Tom Long. Our executive producers are Monica Diaz and Amy Henderson, with help from photographers Grant Hansen and Jason Beal. Also special projects producer Katie Talbot and our digital producer Ian McDonald. I'm Allie Wolf. Thanks for listening.